Hello and welcome to Mountain Patriot Homestead. Today we are in the kitchen and going to be cooking up something a little different but very special. It is called sourdough chocolate cake. So let's get my apron on and we will get started. Hi, how many of you out there use sourdough, whether in some that you've made from scratch, or perhaps you have got one of those sourdough starter kits that comes from a powder, and you just add the flour and the water, follow the directions, and you end up with your sourdough starter. Or perhaps it was passed down to you from a family member or friend. Regardless of how you ended up with your sourdough starter, that is the different ingredient that will be in our recipe today. Now, I use sourdough pretty much on a daily basis. Either that, I won't go into all the details on how to use sourdough, but pretty much I consider sourdough as living. It needs feeding, it needs kind of watching over, taking care of, so it don't die. And so I give it a little stir every day and add a little flour, a little water, but you got to take some out, because if you don't, back in the early years of using sourdough, I found out that if you forget to take some out of the jar, you will end up with this beast that decides to flow over your kitchen, something like in the old movie The Blob, and kind of take over your kitchen. So I learned that it's very important to discard some of it before you feed it. And today that's what we're going to be using for this chocolate cake, is the sourdough discard. So to begin, all we're using is, I'm going to start out with a 1 2/3 cups of flour. Now, let me grab a spoon. I'm not going to sift this flour. I'm just going to spoon it, just kind of loosen it up a little bit, because if you don't, you end up with a more dense product. That's why a lot of recipes when you're baking will say sift your dry ingredients, because it just makes it loosens it up a little bit and keeps it from being a more dense ingredient and gives you more accurate measurements. But with this, I am just going to loosen it up a little bit with my spoon. I know I've got bakers out there that are cringing because they're seeing the methods that I'm using, and it does not look like, I'm sure, what they use. But, it's kind of like I always say, my kitchen, my rules, and same for your kitchen. Don't let people discourage you from getting in your kitchen and experimenting with things just because what you do may be different from what they do, because, it's your kitchen. Do what you want to do. So I am putting this 1 2/3 cups of just all-purpose flour, not a special kind of flour, just all-purpose. So 1 2/3 cups of all-purpose flour. And the next thing I'm using is 2/3 cups of cocoa. Use any brand cocoa powder that you want to. Now, not like the drink mix powder, the actual cooking cocoa powder. And the one that I'm using is the special dark. I don't know how many of you like dark cocoa or dark chocolate, but I love dark chocolate. And so I like the dark cocoa powder. I've not opened this one before, as you can see, so I'm having to dig into it. So this one will have, go ahead and put that in the garbage before I forget it. Now, this one is going to taste a little more chocolatey, I guess, because it is the special dark. Don't get excited, folks. I'm not just going to dump this in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2/3 cups of cocoa powder. Doing the same thing, just spooning it into the cup. You know, you don't have to get, you can get as fancy as you want to in your kitchen, but you don't have to get fancy. You know, get in there and have fun. Enjoy it. If it's not fun, I think that's why I like cooking and a lot of other people say they don't like cooking, is because if you get in there and you make it a chore and it's not fun, then yeah, I wouldn't want to cook either. But if you get in there and you have fun with it, and it's not an obligation, it's something you've got to do, then it's more fun. Now, the next thing I need is a 1 2/3 cups of sugar. So I'm just going to get right here in my sugar bowl using the same measuring utensils as I've been using. I've got to loosen up my sugar a little bit. I don't know about y'all. I don't use sugar just a whole lot. So, you know, every once in a while I got to get in there and just kind of loosen it up. I don't want clumps and lumps and all of that going on. So, just gonna, and I don't have to spoon this out. I can just scoop and just kind of smooth that off a little bit. And there's my cup. And here's my 2/3. All right, so got that 1 2/3 in there. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I need a tablespoon of baking powder. And since I didn't get out my tablespoon measuring spoons, that's all right. I'm just gonna go right in here with my big spoon that I've got, and I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. But that should be a tablespoon of baking powder. Hopefully I said baking powder and not baking soda. There is a difference. This is baking powder. So a tablespoon of baking powder. And I'm going to get a little bit of salt here. I need a 1/2 teaspoon. 1/2 teaspoon, that looks like a perfect 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I bet it's pretty close. May not be perfect, but I bet it's pretty close. So I just go in there with that. And that is my dry ingredients. You notice I put all the dry ingredients there together. And now I'm just gonna, maybe not whisk so vigorously, but I am going to whisk this up here. Still ended up with a little bit of sugar clump going on, and I don't want that. So I am just going to whisk this and make sure all that cocoa powder gets mixed up in there with my other ingredients. Have you ever tried to use cocoa powder and that you add a liquid to it and then that cocoa powder just likes to float? Well, if you mix it with your other ingredients real good, it has less of a tendency to do that. So I'm just mixing all of this in here together. I forgot to mention I am preheating the oven to 350 degrees. That's what you heard going off in the background. So the oven's 350 degrees now and just waiting on us. All right, now the next thing that I'm going to add is I've got 1 cup of sourdough discard. And I'm going to set these those dry ingredients aside. And I'm going to put these wet ingredients in a different bowl, because I'll add the wet to the dry all at one time. So this is my sourdough discard that I just got out of the jar just a few minutes before I started talking to you. And I'm breathing all that stuff, that flour that I was whisking, about to get me coughing. But got my sourdough in here, my sourdough discard in here, and I need 1/2 cup of oil. So I've got my 1/2 cup measure here. And an almost empty jug of oil. Ooh, that's going to be taking it right to the bottom. Well, I about If I'd held my mouth just a little bit different, I wouldn't have had enough. But there is my half cup. Don't want to waste any of them drops because that was right at the bottom of it. Apparently I need to go get some more oil. So, half cup of oil. Whatever kind of oil is your favorite oil. I wouldn't use a flavored oil unless you want some type of odd flavored cake. But you do you. Do whatever makes you happy. I'll throw that down. So that was half cup of oil. So I need 3 eggs, and it says 3 large eggs. Now these are eggs that my girls gave me, and they're doing so good. I mean, they are laying like nobody. I'm gonna crack these off and do another cup, just in case I drop an eggshell or something, because that does happen every once in a while. But these girls, you know, usually when it's cold, girls decide they don't want to lay, because they don't want to be sitting on them cold nests, I guess. I don't know, but they don't like to lay in cold weather. But, you know, they have really been doing a good job, so I am proud of them. But the last week, we really haven't had any cold weather. It's been like a false spring going on, so it really hasn't been bad. But now tomorrow night, they're calling for snow. So any of y'all that were fooled into thinking, hey, spring came early. No, it hadn't. 3 eggs, vanilla, and it says 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Wish I had the strength I had when I was younger. And again, I don't have my measuring spoons out, but I'm gonna guess that's pretty close to 2 teaspoons. I'm going to make a mess. Did you see that splash? I'm telling you, if I get in the kitchen, there's going to be a mess. At some point in time, there's going to be a mess happen. Which I guess is okay since I'm the one that cleans it up anyway. So I watch these. Do y'all ever watch these chefs that get in the kitchens and they're just throwing flour and salt over their shoulders, and they're just making a mess all over the kitchen? And I'm thinking, oh, y'all must not be cleaning your own kitchen, or you wouldn't be doing all that nonsense. But maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe they like cleaning better than I like cleaning. But regardless, I try to not make a mess, but trying and doing is 2 different things. Okay, so I've got my dry ingredients here, and I'm just going to kind of make a hole here in the middle of them. Y'all like my fancy mixing bowl? When my KitchenAid mixer decided to give up the ghost, I saved this mixing bowl out of it, because they don't make KitchenAid mixing bowls that I found like this anymore. This booger is heavy. It's got a handle. I love it. So I didn't get rid of it. I kept it. So I'm going to add these wet ingredients right here to the dry ones. Don't want to waste no good stuff. Especially none of that sourdough starter, because that is good stuff. Just gonna set this over here. I'll get back to that in a minute. And I am just going to stir this up well. Now, I'm sorry I don't have one of them kitchen studios where you can get the overhead and all that going on. Don't have that, so you'll just have to bear with me. I'm stirring. Nothing fancy going on here, just stirring, making sure I get everything off from the sides. Boy, that sure is starting to look pretty. That dark chocolate in there looks like some, you know, people talk about the Valentine candy and all that stuff coming up. I don't need no Valentine candy. I got me some dark chocolate sourdough chocolate cake going on here, so. All right. Whew. Who needs a gym membership? You just sit here and stir up this stuff, because this is a thick batter. And you look at it and you think, oh, I need to put some more something in here because this is just too cotton picking thick. But don't give up. Just keep stirring. Make sure you get all the dry ingredients mixed into all the wet ingredients, because we got one more liquid to go into it. Now, if you watched very many of my videos, what is my drink you always see me drinking? Most of the time, unless it's really hot, and then you'll see me drinking something else. Coffee. So I've got some hot coffee back here, and I know this is not a wet measuring cup, but it's what I got. It's what I got handy. So this is hot coffee. I'll have to make me another pot. So I need 1.5 cups of hot coffee. And I'm just adding that in with that batter. Now this will thin it up some. Now don't get too carried away now stirring, because that coffee is pretty warm. Now, did you notice you don't add the coffee? You don't add that hot coffee in there with those other wet ingredients, because if you do, you're going to end up with scrambled eggs. And I don't like scrambled egg cakes, so that is going to be, that's going to be the order you do it in. You put all the other wet ingredients in there, stir them up real good, then you're going to add that hot coffee. Now, stirring it up, I've ended up with a thin batter. But that's okay, because when this bakes up, it should be a load of deliciousness. And I'm telling you, the smell coming off this chocolate and this coffee, mercy, it sure smells good. All right, that is stirred up. No clumps or lumps or anything like that going on. And I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to do one other thing. I don't know how you grease and flour your pans, but, you know, I used to do it. You know, do you remember back when, well, before everybody decided that Crisco was bad for them, but folks use Crisco, and would grease up their pans, and then they put flour in there. Well, they'd use maybe butter or lard, whatever. But I remember Mama using Crisco. She'd put that in there, and then she'd put the flour in there. Now, did you see which jug I ended up reaching and getting? It wasn't the flour jug. I'm going to use this and draw off this spoon, because I'm going to use this spoon again. It wasn't the flour jug this time, or the canister. It was actually the sugar one, because with this one, you are not going to grease and flour your pan to keep it from sticking. You're going to grease and sugar the pan. You hear those, I don't know if you can hear it or not, the little sugar lumps rolling around in there. But yeah, you're going to use sugar in this one, in this recipe, to coat the sides of your pan to keep things from sticking. So that is what I'm doing here. Just making sure that I've got it good and covered, and got the inside of that all good and ready to go. I'm just gonna try to keep things moved a little bit out of the way so I've got elbow room and don't knock everything off in the floor. So here we go, and you'll see how thin this batter is compared to what your normal, I guess, cake batters would be. It's a very thin batter, but it's okay. It's gonna cook up and be great. I'm telling you, the smell coming out of this bowl makes me want to just crawl off in the bowl. All right. Can you tell I don't like to waste nothing? That stuff looks so good. All right, close enough. There we go. Now, do that just a bit. That kind of gets some of those air bubbles out of it. Now I am going to stick this in the oven. It's at 350 degrees. Going to stick it in the oven for 45 to 50 minutes, and then we're going to see how it turns out. So don't run off. You don't want to miss the cake. We'll be right back. And we are back. The cake is finished. As you can see here, it just looks wonderful. It came out at exactly 50 minutes. You may have to adjust depending on your oven, you know, because some ovens do bake a little hotter than others, but mine came out spot on at 50 minutes. And so what I'm going to do, before I go ahead, let me show you. See this, see the sugar? I don't know if you can, but there is the sugar that was used to instead of greasing and flouring, we greased and sugared. And you can just see I could dust that off, but hey, why get rid of sweet stuff on sweet stuff? So I'm gonna leave it there. Doesn't hurt anything. Now, what I'm going to use to frost this is not frosting. You could use whatever your favorite frosting is, whether you're using an icing or whether you're using a glaze or powdered sugar or nothing at all. My husband would be perfectly happy with nothing at all because he just likes the cake itself. But what I'm going to use is something a little different. In one of my grocery hauls from the little Benton Dent here a while back, I showed a grocery haul where I had gotten several jars of different dessert sauces. Now this one is from Stonewall Kitchen, and it's a dark chocolate sea salt caramel sauce. Well, that's a mouthful, but this is a dessert sauce that you could use from anything from ice cream to apple slices, drizzle it on toffee, put it in your coffee, or as I'm going to use it as a sauce over the top of the cake. Now remember, the cake itself had coffee as one of the ingredients. So I took this sauce and I thinned it with a little bit of coffee. Now I could have done the same thing thinning it. I've got some on my finger. Could have done the same thing thinning it by putting in the microwave, but my microwave has not been working for months now, which is fine. I don't use the microwave other than for just reheating things anyway. So I have not been in a big hurry about my husband getting a new microwave in here. I really don't care one way or the other. So what I did do though is I put this on the stove, a little saucepan, little coffee just to thin it. See, it's still warm, so it's still thin. I could let it thicken back up some, but I didn't really want to, because I just want to kind of pour this over the top of it. It's going, I think, to help keep this cake moist, because I don't want it to lose its moisture, because it just looks like it's going to be wonderful. And if you could have smelt this house while I was baking this, it smelled, if I could make a candle that smelled like this cake did in the oven, I'd be starving to death all the time. Now, as you can see, it's kind of pooling in the plate around it as I go, because it is warm, and so it is just kind of running off. But that, like I said, that is okay, because it will stiffen up. I guess I could say that. It will stiffen up over time. I'll look over there, make sure I'm not pouring it off on the table. You see, I've got I always put a towel or something on the table when I'm doing something like this, because I know I'm going to end up making a mess at some point if I don't. And it's just kind of, I can just pick this up and throw it in the washing machine. And even though I'll wipe the table down, I don't have near as much of the scrubbing the table down as I would otherwise. So I am just completely covering this. The little cracks that were in the top of this cake as it baked are just filled now with this coffee, chocolate, sea salt, caramel goodness. And let's pour the rest of that right there. And it smells, I hate to keep saying it smells wonderful. It smells amazing. It smells great. It smells whatever is your favorite adjectives. But yes, it does smell very good. I'm not going to cut it and get into it just yet. I'm going to wait for my husband to get home. He is out doing some skid steer work today. I'm going to wait for him to get home and surprise him with a piece. Since Valentine's Day falls on a Wednesday this week, I thought it would be just as good a time to do something, a little special cake on the weekend. And so I will surprise him with a piece of this when he gets home. So I will video that and let you know how that goes. So don't go away. Well, we got done with the cake, and happy Valentine's Day early. It's not a box of chocolate, but maybe it'll be a good replacement for it. Go ahead and try it.
Not a Hershey's Kiss, but it's good.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day again. Thank y'all. I'm glad you watched. Hope you try this. And if you do, let me know down in the comments. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. Love y'all. Mountain Patriot Homestead signing out.